thank you, everyone, for taking your valuable time and making the decision to attend our webinar today dealing with a supplier portal. And vendor self-service encompasses a lot of different areas of functionality, and we're going to be touching on predominantly all aspects of our functionality, although it can be implemented in pieces. If you're only interested in AP automation or just the supplier portal for inquiry, PO change, and PO acknowledge, that's entirely possible. Or a supplier portal for them updating pricing and their address book credentials. With that, I'm going to go through a few slides, and I emphasize the word few because we want this to be a live demo. We have our J.D. Edwards Enterprise One, although this software that we're showing, like all of our software solutions, are supported on any version of E1 or J.D. Edwards World. We have customers World 87.3 to the current 9.3, and then same thing with E1 XE, which is now, boy, about a dozen years old, and the current version 9.1, soon to be 9.2 for Enterprise One. With that, we're going to be going through, as I mentioned, I have Matt Minchek here. He's going to be doing the demo. Our demo environment for vendor self-service dealing with the purchase order, what I call purchase order management functionality, and it deals with workflows and alert from the point that you create a final PO to notifying the supplier either by email or by app. We do have a native app, so app notifications are supported, allows the supplier to acknowledge the PO or initiate a request for change. Maybe they can't meet the deadline, request ship date deadline on one line item. It also is just a general inquiry for looking up outstanding purchase orders, what's open, historic purchase orders. The demo also involves the ASN portion with providing visibility with shipping between the vendor and your receiving dock, and then the PO automation dealing with a three-way match. One thing I want to emphasize, we have J.D. Edwards customers using this today, so everything that we're going to be showing is proven. We'll then be talking about vendor onboarding. We have a number of J.D. Edwards customers doing that, and then the supplier contract or supplier contact and item updates. A little bit about K-Rise Systems. We've been around for over 10 years. Our predominant business focus is strategic software solutions for the J.D. Edwards marketplace. Think of it as value-add software solutions. So as an example, I'm putting my cursor here by e-commerce. We have solutions dealing with credit card payment, easy payment for sales orders and invoices, such as online bill pay, easy commerce. We also provide integration for third-party e-commerce solutions like Magento integration into J.D. Edwards. And then we have the vendor supplier solutions. And with the vendor supplier solutions, that's what we're going to be focusing this webinar today. We do have HR employee self-service solutions. And you know what? Bear with me one second. I just want to turn off the alerts there. There we go. With many customers using our self-service and portal functionality for things like time entry, manager-employee inquiry and position change, leave request, pay stubs, benefit enrollment, etc. Going to the next slide here. And I made a point a second ago about this is proven. This is just a representation of some of our J.D. Edwards clients. Every one of our clients are referenceable. We're proud of that. This is a high-level overview. I'm not going to spend the time to go through it because Matt's going to demonstrate it. We're going to go through all of the area functionality as you're noting here. And one thing I want to emphasize, actually, all of our products are built on an enterprise software application development platform. And what I mean by that is that EASYProcess is our product to create applications. And the fact that we have so many enterprise-level applications created for the J.D. Edwards community, and I'll be very blunt here, it usually starts out with a business case, and then we simply define best practices with the help of our J.D. Edwards customers, and we create a best practice template with full administration, but this is all built on top of EASYProcess. What this means to our clients is that when an application is built on a software development platform, it's attuned to change. And one thing I've realized over the decades I've been in IT is customer, vendor, supplier, employee, web-facing applications, they all go through some level of company-specific needs, marketplace needs, and the fact that you're constantly getting feedback and you want to expand the functionality, that old adage, change is constant, is so true with web-facing applications. And that's the benefit of EASYProcess. 40% of our customers work with us from a turnkey. They don't want to hear the word development. They want all services to come out of K-Rise. But 60% of our customer base, they want some level of ownership with this platform. Some of our customers actually take the platform and create applications similar to what we have, or even brand new applications. We have a realty company doing elaborate job costing. That's EDR, right? Right. In Memphis, so they're doing job costing. Mercury Marine Division of Brunswick, they created a dealer portal for serial number, outboard motors, etc., registration, and full warranty claims. So the capabilities with EASYProcess, and this is just a little bit about EASYProcess. So think of it as an alternative development environment to J.D. Edwards. Companies come to us and they say many times they're limited. They need, especially in the area of interoperability, a workflow. Chevron, some of the most complex workflow processes that we've seen, where there's simultaneous processes, 9 levels deep, and we have that functionality built into EASYProcess. And everything about EASYProcess, by the way, is graphical. It's visual. There's no programming. The code is automatically created. So when you're doing a workflow process like this, I'll be real brief. This is an employee submitting a request to update their employee master, and it's just going through the approval and denial process to a point where it gets to HR benefits, and if it's approved, it's updated as a receipt in J.D. Edwards. Our applications can exist on premises. We're based on .NET 4.5, so our virtual or physical servers are IIS servers with 1 user license of SQL Server. We predominantly use the Rackspace Cloud, but that does not limit us to using other cloud platforms. Cloud is a huge growth area. I think it parlays directly with Oracle touting cloud applications so much. And this is just a high-level overview of our applications. And obviously, we're focused on the vendor side with vendor self-service. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Okay, so what you're looking at here is our login screen for our VSS portal. Before we get into logging in as a supplier, I want to talk a little bit about some admin functionality and talk a little bit about the users and the roles that are set up in the system. So I'm going to log in as an administrator, and immediately you see the admin has a menu options, and then, on his home screen he has some daily tasks specific to the administrator. So I want to go to work with users, And this is going to show me all the users that are set up in the system. So just to mention a few users that we have set up here. So we have Supplier Principal, and this is going to be the main user that we're going to use throughout the demo. We also have Procurement, Customer Service, Management, Accounts Receivable, Transportation, Accounts Payable, and that looks like it. So essentially what the role will do will limit what the user will see when they log in. So for example, let's log in as Transportation, Catherine Kramer, just to see an example of what happens when you log in as a different user. There you go. So since she's a member of Transportation, she only gets the Transportation menu, and she can only initiate things like an ASN request or something like that. Okay, so now we'll go back to the admin. And what I want to do here is show that you can also, as an administrator, you can also impersonate a user and perform actions as that specific user. So for example, let's say I wanted to acknowledge a PO for the supplier Aaron McCarty under the 4319 address number. I can click Impersonate, and that shows me at the top that I'm now impersonating that specific user with their address number. And then you can go ahead and perform the actions as necessary, acting as that user. So now what I want to do is we are going to jump into some supplier functionality. So first things first, I want to show you one of the notifications that a supplier would receive on a daily basis or on a scheduled basis. So the admin has functionality where he can trigger this notification automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and send this notification to myself. Okay, and then that would obviously be a scheduled email rather than physically triggered. And then also I want to log out and completely close the application. So if I go to my emails, I can see I got a supplier notification email saying, "Dear supplier, please log into the vendor self-service portal. You're waiting, these POs are waiting your action." So this is my list of new purchase orders. It's pretty much a way for the supplier to quickly acknowledge or action on the POs. So for example, this PO 5169, if I wanted to quickly acknowledge this, we have set up right here is an auto login link. It's an encrypted link that is only valid for a set number of days. I believe this one is valid for 7 days. After that, the link will expire. So if I click this, it's going to automatically log me into the vendor self-service portal as Aaron McCarty, which is the supplier for that specific PO. And it takes you directly to the Edit PO screen with the information about that specific PO. So that's one way that you can kind of do an inquiry on the PO and manage and start the request on editing or acknowledging that specific PO. Another way would be, since we're logged in as the supplier here, you can see we have the supplier menu here at the top. We can click the PO link, and that's going to take us to our PO inquiry. So it's essentially showing me all of the POs against my specific supplier number, and this is actually a detailed line level inquiry. So you can see the PO 5182 has lines 1 and then 1.001. And then you can also see the status. So you can see these were acknowledged, completed. You can see the ship to, promise delivery. All of these fields are coming directly out of JD Edwards. And the type of fields that you see here are definitely configurable. Anything in JD Edwards can be displayed in the portal real time. So also, if you look here at the top, we have some filtering options. So you can filter on PO number, item number, supplier number, status, anything, pretty much any column that you see in the list, or even anything in JD Edwards, you can filter on here at the top.
And it's a compound filter, so somebody could enter a combination of from and to date with a status, and you're going to narrow the results that you're seeing.
Absolutely. Okay. We also have these status buckets here at the top. So we're just in the general inquiry. We can also switch to see all of the POs that are waiting my acknowledgement. That takes us to a header level view where you can actually click into the PO to acknowledge. Then there's also acknowledge canceled, and then also revise PO. So that you have already acknowledged that you need to change later. So I'll switch back over to inquiry. Another good piece of functionality to demonstrate here is this view and print. So if I click view, if I click print, that's going to generate a PDF of the invoice from JD Edwards with the data for that specific PO.
So that's an auto-generated PDF?
Yes.
Yes.
Another option would be to actually get that from some create form?
Yeah. Many JD Edwards companies have document management like Bottom Line Create Form or OpDeal. There's a number of solutions out there. And so in conjunction with our portal, whether it's the invoice number that you want hyperlinked to that PDF, invoice or statement, we can bring up statements too. In fact, we do have that functionality. We're going to show it. But once again, we can work against your document management files. Usually they're PDF.
Absolutely. Okay, so now let's jump into some functionality on actually editing a PO, acknowledging a PO. So we're going to take a PO. We're going to pretty much take it through the entire process of acknowledgement, ASN, receive, and then we're going to do a three-way match at the very end. So first things first, we're going to start from a fresh PO directly from JD Edwards. So let me switch over to JE, log in, go ahead and enter a new PO. So the supplier number is 4319, ship to 4242, branch length P30. And then we'll just do one line item here on this PO. All right, so we have the PO 5183 that we're going to be working with. So if I go back and I do a refresh on the screen, we can see our 5183.
But the supplier would first get an email.
Yes, yeah, similar to what we saw, they would get this notification email where they click in, and they can acknowledge it that way. So right now it's sitting at the status in JD Edwards that's waiting on acknowledgement pretty much. So we're going to switch over to acknowledge PO. We'll go to 5183 and hit acknowledge, and that takes us to our edit PO screen. So this is showing some header level information as well as line level information about the PO.
And by the way, you're seeing one version of how it could look.
Absolutely.
We can pull in any field from JD Edwards. We have many times people requesting from us to pull from custom tables, 55, 56. We have many times companies asking us to pull from outside applications, be it a bill of lading from a 3PL as an example. So the information many times just simply becomes a database exercise. It's very, very easy for us. The format and how it looks, obviously everything you're seeing there is soft-coded from an HTML, so your branding down to your font, we would duplicate that to a T. Absolutely.
Okay, so a little bit about this screen. So we're looking at our PO that has one line, and then it's showing us quantity, unit cost, promise date, and then this comment. So a few things that I'm going to talk about right now, but I'm not going to do until a little bit later, is this click to update or split. So you have the supplier has the ability to split this onto 2 separate lines, and like I said, we'll do that a little bit later. And then you can also add, you could change the promise date to a later date or an earlier date, and then you can also add comments. So the comments do go into JD Edwards as media object attachments.
Yeah, line item and header level comments, right?
Yeah. So you can actually view this in JD Edwards as well. But for now, for this example, we're just going to quickly check that line and hit acknowledge. Okay, so that was updated in JD Edwards. And if we go back to our inquiry screen and hit find, we can see that our PO 5183 is now acknowledged. Also, if we go into JD Edwards and look up that purchase order, we can go to the detail and see that that specific line moved to status 300, which is PO acknowledgement, record supplier acknowledgement.
And although it's not necessary to synchronize our acknowledge and our database because we are working from a separate database with JD Edwards, it's advisable. It just makes it easier. But as an example, if your activity rules right now do not reflect acknowledge, you can still use this with simply the acknowledge inside of our portal. But most companies do like to keep them in sync for the obvious beneficial reasons.
Absolutely. Okay, so now that it's acknowledged, the next step would be to create a shipment or an ASN request for that PO or for that line item. So we're going to go to ASN. We're going to create a new ASN.
I just want to add one other comment. I mentioned earlier that our application does have an app. So conventionally, our workflow mechanism involves emails. But many, many companies, especially that want to recognize the newest generation, the millenniums and such, with their strong usage of smartphones, first off, this is supported under the form factor of any smartphone, be it iOS or Android or Windows. Secondly, we can go a step further with smartphone mobility, and we do have an app. So as an example, a supplier, if they wanted an app and we can make it intelligent from the app, and they wanted to acknowledge your PO from a smartphone app, that we would provide the app. You would publish it on Apple Store or a Google Store, and then you would simply confirm it at that particular point. So that's optional. So a lot of companies, almost every company universally, they like to see that functionality. Many of them, though, are sitting on the border whether to go with that. Almost everybody agrees an app type of functionality, because apps have a lot of advantages over browsers. You don't have to deal with the login. You stay logged in. You can create a GUI that's really sharp. It has memory management. Browsers are zero client. They don't have memory management. So based on the last sync, it's just like email. The supplier can look up order history, and even if they're not connected by Wi-Fi or cellular, they can check it out. So just a few comments there on the app functionality.
All right, thanks. All right, so we'll continue on with this ASN request. So I just specified a ship from location, and we'll continue. So now it gives me a list of the available POs to create this ASN request for. So we're just going to add our 5183 line to this shipment. You can see here it added this to the current shipment request. And now we'll go ahead and proceed to next. So now it's going to ask me some details about the shipment. So telephone number, it fills out the name, email, freight ready date, I'll just go ahead and quickly fill this out. So temperature, protection, no. Hazardous material. And all of these fields are, yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah. Matt and I are nodding. This is all optional. Let me put it from the perspective of one end of the spectrum. One end of the spectrum for ASN, shipment notification, might be just from the PO inquiry field where the vendor clicks ship. And so maybe that updates a status called in transit. And maybe that's all you want. Or if you want something more involved along the lines of a formal ASN, we realize this is a touchy subject because depending on just how strategic that partner is, they might not go through this.
All right, so I filled it out. We're going to go ahead and submit this. And then this can optionally send out an email with these details. But essentially, the reason why I did that was it does change the status on the PO to supplier ASN received. So once the ASN is submitted, you're going to go ahead and ship. The next step would be to actually receive that PO. So we're going to go into JD Edwards. We're going to go to enter receipts by PO, look up our 5183 PO, and we'll receive that line. Okay. There we go. So now that it's received, if I do another refresh here, you can see that that PO moved to a status of completed. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create an invoice for that completed received PO. And we're going to do that with a three-way match. So you can see we have other invoice types here. So you have PO-based, which is a two-way match. You have PO-based with receipt, which is a three-way match. And then you have just a regular voucher entry. So we're going to do PO-based with receipt. Invoice number, just put in some invoice number. Invoice date, and then a currency. And I'll just copy the invoice number for the comments. All right, so we'll save that and load the details. So this is where it's asking me to specify a receipt number for this specific three-way match. So we have a little lookup helper here that's going to give us all the available receipts and POs that we can perform this three-way match. We're going to use our 5183 PO with this 4489 receipt, and we'll add that. So you can see it added our one line from that PO, and then you can go ahead and check and verify the quantity for the invoice amount, or the quantity invoice. So once we confirm and submit this, you can see that invoice request has been created, and it's waiting for Mike Ledesma for approval. So Mike Ledesma is a member of AP. That's the only one required to approve this three-way match. Keep in mind, approvals are optional. Approvals are also configurable. You can have it go to, as Doug mentioned earlier, 9 levels deep of approval with parallel approvals. So it can be complex if needed.
And once again, we recognize companies that your actual process could vary different, and that's why this is called a demo environment. It's simplistic. It's simply to show you that we have the functionality there. In all cases, our deliverable matches up to usually many more details, company-specific details that are shared with us through conference calls, Visio diagrams, etc.
Okay, so now we're logged in as Mike Ledesma. As I mentioned, he is a member of Accounts Payable. We're going to go to his daily tasks, which you can see that he has 19 requests waiting for his approval. Go ahead and click in there. We'll look at that invoice that we just created and add some comments. Thanks, and then click Approve. Okay, so upon approval, you can see that we have an invoice ID now, 36 3679, and we can go ahead and look that up in JDF. So we go to Open Receipts by Supplier, look up the document number 3679, and see that it's a vouchered. So there's our vouchered PO in JDF. Okay, so that's essentially the full life of that PO all the way through to the three-way match. The next thing that I want to talk about is some advanced PO actions and approvals. So we're going to log back in as our supplier, which is Aaron McCarty. We're going to go to our PO inquiry screen, and we're actually going to create a new PO in JD Edwards again. So we'll go to enter purchase order, and we'll pretty much create another PO exactly like before, 4319. Number, quantity. Okay, so now we're going to be working with the 5184 PO. So if we go back, hit a refresh, there's our PO that we just created. And like I said, now we're going to still acknowledge the PO, but we're also going to perform an edit on that as well. So if you noticed before, when I clicked acknowledge, it says any changes are subject to approval. We do have triggers right now where if you change quantity, promise date on the system, then it's going to trigger an approval, and it will have to be approved before it is acknowledged in JD Edwards.
And you decide what needs to be changed to involve in a collaborative buyer-supplier discussion. It could be price. The price could be incorrect, so that could be another field as an example.
Okay, so the scenario that we're going to demonstrate here is, let's say the supplier cannot supply the full amount or quantity of 5 for this specific item. So what he's going to want to do is, first of all, he's going to split the line and say, okay, these you can have 2, but 3 of them won't be available until next week. So we'll go ahead and split the line, which it does that directly into JD Edwards. And then you can change the promise date on the second line. But first, we're going to go ahead and acknowledge this first line because we can commit to the quantity of 2. So we'll go ahead and acknowledge. And you can see that that happens right away. It was updated directly, and there was no change. Also note that 5184 still stays in your acknowledgement bucket because it still has another line to acknowledge. So you can go back in. You can acknowledge this line, but change the date to the 17th instead of the 10th. And then also you can add a comment. So let's say these 3 won't be available until next week. So this is an example of us recording the full history of all the actions that happen on this specific PO. So anytime somebody acknowledges or the status changes or someone adds a comment, you'll see a line like this in the comments. So it gives you a full history on the PO in JD Edwards. Okay, so we're acknowledging these 3 lines. I just added the comment that these 3 won't be available until next week, and then I changed the date from the 10th until the 17th. So we'll go ahead and hit acknowledge. Any changes are subject to approval. We'll go ahead and click OK. All right, so you can see that now it was submitted for approval. And it should have went to Craig Lerner, who is a member of procurement. Go ahead and log out and log in as Craig. And then just as before, you can see he has 22 requests waiting. And you can see the change request for line 1.001 for our 5184 PO. All right, so for this approval screen, it shows us a little information about what happened. So first of all, you can see that the promise date which was changed from the 10th to the 17th. And then if you click into the comments, you can see the full history as I mentioned before. So I did add this comment, but this one was added automatically by the system. Just in case they don't actually add a comment, it does tell you that there was a change in promise date from 10 to the 17th.
And by the way, the idea of adding all of these comments into the record history inside of J.D. Edwards directly, that came to us from Amway. Amway accesses every one of our procurement solutions, and once again, it's all about not only a portal being collaborative and one place instead of the unstructured scenarios that we run into all the time with information across phone messages or stick-it notes. And so we always thought that was just a great suggestion from Amway, and we built it into our product.
All right, so now we'll go ahead and approve this. So that's fine. Thanks. You can also add the comment there as well, so they can see it. Go ahead and approve. All right, so the request was approved. So now if we log back in as our supplier, go to our POs, you can see that our 5184 PO is now acknowledged. And it was not acknowledged until I did approve that as the internal user. So what you're looking at is the EASYProcess development tool set. We're going to go to workflow, and we want to look at our, I think the invoice workflow is more appealing. So we'll take a look at the invoice workflow. Okay, so explaining a little bit on what is going on here. So the vendor, pretty much these are all statuses in our workflow system. The vendor status represents the vendor actually submitting the request, filling out the information for the invoice. Then we have logic in here, so you can see these three processes. The logic is going to determine, based on your business rules, where the request should go for approval, first or next. So since this workflow is used for all three invoice types, it's used for a two-way match, a three-way match, and a regular voucher. You can see that we have a voucher exit here. So if it's a voucher, it goes to the assignee for the voucher. So you do have to, when you submit a voucher, you have to, you have to specify a person that can approve that amount for you as an internal user. So that's where this assignee comes into place. Once that internal person approves it, then it goes to AP for approval. And then if it's approved, it goes to this to JDE, which is pretty much a batch status that automatically updates or enters the invoice into JD Edwards. So this is where we're going to call something like a business function to actually manipulate the data in JD Edwards.
Can you show the business logic inside this workflow canvas? An example?
Sure. So we'll go into this, and this is what we call the process canvas. So this is where I mentioned if it's PO-based.
Can you zoom up just a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure.
Great.
Okay. So if it's PO-based or if it's a PO receipt, which is a three-way match and a two-way match, you can see it goes to the AP status exit. If it's a voucher, it goes to the voucher status exit. And you can also click. You can open these up to see what it's actually checking on. So this is checking invoice type equal to PO and invoice type equal to two-way match. So that's essentially the logic in EASYProcess and how everything works. As far as adding new statuses, everything in EASYProcess is drag and drop. So let's say we wanted to add a third approver before or right after AP. We can actually drag and drop a new status here. And I don't know, do you want to give me an example of someone that would approve it?
AP approver.
Yeah. So So I could go to, let's say, AP again. So we'll go ahead and name the AP approver, and then you just reconnect the lines, and then you would obviously want to define these people as a role or a specific user. So the top process would go ahead and assign the owner, and then the middle process would go ahead and tell you where it would go after that person actually approves the request.
Could you bring up the business logic from J.D. Edwards to show exactly how we update J.D. Edwards?
Absolutely. Process 213. So we'll look at the three-way match.
I'm working against J.D. Edwards. We're using the XML call object to call business functions. Some companies want to work from a batch Z file perspective. It's your choice. We like doing things, and most companies like to do things from a business function perspective.
Absolutely. So what you're looking at right now is, first of all, I went into the process responsible for creating the three-way match, and then I went into the service that's responsible for sending the business function XML to J.D. Edwards. So this is the XML that we actually send to JDE. So you can see we're calling the F4314 begin doc, and then if we scroll down, you can see there's an edit line for each line, and then eventually it leads down to an end doc, which would finalize that request.
Okay. There are quite a few technical people attending the webinar, otherwise we wouldn't do this.
Absolutely.
And it ties to the questions we received. Thank you, Matt.
Sure, no problem.
And there's a number of people with this webinar that asked about suppliers being able to use a portal, directly update their contact information, and initiate change request. So with that, what I'm going to very quickly show you is a very recent presentation from just this last August 2015. It was in Denver. A business analyst by the name of Julie Everett from Amway. She focused on this portion of the procurement. They use every one of our solutions, but she wanted to specifically bring up how Amway uses the selection of K-Rise with our applications for vendors to update item pricing and address book. So this is going to be very, very quick, and we are going to send this slide deck that Julie presented, and this is obviously a case study review. I think it's even more pertinent from that perspective. But what Julie did is she mapped out the flow scenario, and as you can see, it's kind of crazy, and she talks about the roles between buyer, sourcing, buying assistant to manage this process, and what they envisioned with the project, and what they did in this particular case is they selected K-Rise, and she talks about how they use it, and basically taking this disorganized process here and making it a lot more manageable. And like I said, I'm going to be updating this, or I'm going to be sending this in the follow-up email. So they created a workflow process that made a lot of sense with pricing updates. Now, one thing I'm going to, with the supplier requesting, and once again, it's all about using the portal. It's all about having centralized area of control with all of the information contained within the portal. So you can see the portal request submission. That's another page with information. The request submission requires a comment, and they do acknowledge the confirmation from the supplier on this change. They do have email process flows working through, and that ties to the workflow process that Matt went through. And once again, the There's a number of action steps that the buyer can take, but you can get an idea. Here's something interesting, the cost impact calculation. They were actually having a buyer assistant calculate that. In other words, the outstanding purchase orders in the system and other variables, the impact on this price change. And it now calculates it automatically. And so the approval flow is one of the parameters ties to that cost impact. And it defines whether it's a simple approval flow or something that's more complex tied to the revenue amounts affected. The supplier final email, and once again they're updating the pricing update in JD Edwards. And then in this portion of the demo, she touches on allowing the suppliers to directly update the JD Edwards address book, and you can see that here, first validation. And once again, in all situations that you've seen this afternoon, we're pulling directly from JD Edwards. So this is updating the contact information directly. And here's another page. And then once again, that gets updated through address book revisions directly into JD Edwards. So just this one piece, and I found that amazing, really, the business value to Amway just from the perspective of that area of functionality, which is suppliers updating their contact information, updating their pricing information. And by the way, something that Julie mentioned, because impact analysis and because from a supplier perspective they were able to present things in such a detailed, organized manner, it actually helped with the negotiations with the supplier, whether to accept, deny, or negotiate a mutual increase, and that has saved Amway money, just that one portion right there. So it was a 4-month project, and just some topics that Julie put up there about the benefits. Once again, I'm going to send this. We did not have time to go through this in terms of a demo. We're down to the last few minutes, and with that, Kent, why don't you bring up some of the Q&A? We'll focus on that portion.
Someone was asking about SAAS, and we want to be clear that all our products are available through a SAAS model. And what I want to do is I'm just going to launch a quick poll here. We're kind of curious to know. We know SAAS is growing. Even in the JD Edwards world, we're offering some very unique things. And you should see a questionnaire up now. And we'd like to just get some feedback on how many of you would consider SAAS licensing, you know, whether it's for this product you're seeing now or maybe HR, and to what degree your IT and your business folks are.
And I want to emphasize that our solutions are pure cloud SaaS solution. A lot of people confuse hosting with SaaS. So with Rackspace, we pay the entire Rackspace bill. We configure 3 environments like JD Edwards, development, test, production. We deal with the 3 separate servers our application requires. It's very modern software. You have to have modern, state-of-the-art software in order to be a software development platform. So the front-end web application, the GUI, the look and feel, which is very customizable, like you said, is distinctly separate from the application server with the business logic distinctly separated from the your data, the customer data, in the database server. All of that is in the cloud. That entire infrastructure we manage. What's involved, though, is a VPN connection. So in the States here, we're using the Rackspace Chicago data center. So we do need to create a VPN, a secure point-to-point VPN connection to your local area network. Obviously, we need to get to JD Edwards, your email server, possibly other servers. So it's really finding out what your firewall is. For most companies, it's Cisco, and it's simply a matter, Matt is the best way to explain it. It's a router-to-router IP configuration.
Yeah. It's a firewall-to-firewall open connection where you can specify the, open up the port specific to JD Edwards. so we can go ahead and make that connectivity.
Okay, okay.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Great.
Go ahead.
So we had about 44% actually are somewhat going for SaaS, but 1/3 said they are absolutely pursuing SaaS license.
That's interesting.
Good. I think that pretty much.
With the questions and answers, did you want to share any of those?
You know, someone was asking about is this ready for World, and we mentioned ahead of time we are ready for World. We have customers using it. We do use emulators to call your RPG functions the way that you have them set up. And of course, reading from the tables is the same as reading from an E1 table. So fully ready for World. And the great thing is that if in the future you move to E1, we have the ability to make some changes to keep all your functionality the same when you move up to E1. Estimated times for implementation. You know, boy, there's such a broad range. We generally will say a 10-week implementation for this product line.
2 to 3 months is an average for implementing the software. We based it on best practices. So all the web pages are there. They can be edited per your specifications. We're a big believer in test. We have 3 phases of go live. Your internal, do things internally, roll it out to a group of beta suppliers, and then general release to all suppliers. So our software also manages the version control between test and production. For anybody on the call today that would like pricing, we're very, very proud of our affordable pricing, whether you want to do it at a specific point solution, say just the PO acknowledge, PO management portion, or something bigger. We offer very, very affordable pricing, and that can be, I can convey that back to you very easily, either from an on-premises or a SaaS pricing model.
Great.
Anything else, Kent? Well, actually, we're down to...
There are a lot of specific questions about unique things, and we'll tackle those individually. But generally, the answers for unique things you have is you saw the workflow. It's very fluid, very malleable to what your needs are. We have never met a business need we could not find a way to integrate with EASYProcess.
And we want to once again thank everybody for attending this webinar. I'm going to be following up with an email with the various slide decks that you can link to and a recording. We had quite a few companies and individuals ask for the recording, and everybody that's in attendance, I will also send you a link so that you can download the file, the Windows Media file of this session. It is recorded. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day. Bye now.
SCIU is a product that Amway actually, their VP came from Procter & Gamble, and he had an application there that he wanted at Amway. We worked with them, and now that's released. They're using it. They've seen a 2 FTE efficiency improvement, and you can see there's quite a few fields here. This is where the buyer logs in, or the vendor logs in, looks up their products. Then they can review their item changes. You can see the percentages are calculated. Amway actually has very complex rules deciding what the impact will be. Basically, it's the number of items times the change in cost. They have rules here that allow the vendor to make the changes without approval as long as it falls within certain ranges, which has tremendously improved things. Nobody has to intervene. And here you can see a pretty complex screen that a buyer can look at, approver can look at, and they learn a lot of unique things based on Amway rules. So this can be implemented also to allow customers to log in and approve pricing here as well. We can replicate your functionality, but then double the efficiencies that you get with very complex approval processes if necessary.
So when the buyer logs in to add a new vendor, they get a blank form. Some of these are drop-downs, some of these are text boxes. So the text boxes are free form, validated against JDE. So vendor name can't be longer than 60 digits, I believe. Search type is coming from a UDC. So we can go ahead and search that. As I said, the drop-downs also can be defined in our portal. So this is a drop-down that we defined as a field that we wanted to have yes or no. And again, they can come from anywhere. And we can give you the ability to manage your own list inside the admin connectivity. Taxpayer name, let's call this Doug Vendor. We have our remittance address, so this is going to go into JDE when we create this record at the end of approval. Aurora. Again, our state is coming from JDE, but it's defined just as the states inside the U.S. because that's how we set up our JDE. But again, if your state is in Australia or if you have states somewhere in Canada, you want to have your states there, not a problem. We can add our phone number. This will be and again, we have the validation on the page as well. So we need to make sure that phone number is 10 digits, or if you are working with people that you don't need to validate that, we take care of that as well. So you can validate against a specific amount or not, depending on how your customers are set up. Let's make sure that works though, because that was not enough digits. We can select our payment terms. We can add our details. We can add any comments that will go along the way, and then attachments as well will go all the way into JDE, adding to the JDE address book master. Select these. Again, here's another drop down that I'm sure you're all familiar with payment terms that will be defaulted. Again, a list coming from JDE. And then, like I said, attachments. I can browse here, pick a new attachment, and then we have some government coding. Again, so we're just defaulting lines, and everything you see here does not need to match what you have. We can easily change this information to match the vendor screen you have, and that's exactly what we did for Fox. That's exactly what we did for Rouse. So we took what we had and took what they needed and created exactly what they needed for their go live. And Fox has added on to that and added functionality to that a couple times now since it first went live. And then we have our requested by. The other possibility you could do with vendor onboarding is you can do it on behalf of, and that's what our requested by does. So we could select other here, and then it would follow the approval flow of that person rather than myself. So if Kent needed something and I needed to follow the approval flow of Kent, I could come in here, select Kent, and have it follow them, but I'm going to have it follow the buyer's approval flow and make the submission. So as we saw in that approval flow, we're going to submit, didn't add, and this is what I was talking about, the on-page validation, which makes sure we fill in all the correct fields. So here I missed one of our required fields. Let's grab one that I know will follow the form validation rules and submit.
Let me just add one thing about our forms, Alex. There are a lot of companies that use a lot of our competitors' products for workflow, and they have nice electronic forms with blank spaces, and they might be able to validate a date or a number or something. But because we're validating every field against any data source, these forms become extremely mistake-proof, which is one place we stand out significantly against the competition. And our customers love that it's one-time entry, and that data can be trusted to go all the way through to not just J.D. Edwards, but wherever it needs to eventually end up.
Right. All right, so we see here we got a pop-up message letting us know it's gone to AP Manager for approval. My request number is there, and then also I'll be receiving an email shortly letting me know that I have that approval waiting for me. Let's go ahead and log out and log back in first. I grabbed that user, log in. And then on the left, I want to show just something that I really enjoy as part of my homepage is this My Actions. This shows me all of the information I have either waiting on me or that I've submitted. So on the top, we have the approve and the watch. We can add watchers to a request, which basically allows that person to be notified whenever a step is taken, and then approve is something specifically waiting on me. The other things we have here are the composing, anything I've saved and have not yet submitted. My submitted ones, those are waiting for approval. And then I have approve and denied. So any request that has been finalized, waiting for approval or denial. Let's go ahead and go to approve.
So really the notification with Workflow is predominantly through email and then on the portal itself with the My Actions and My Requests, right?
Exactly.
Okay, and I just want to add one variable. I mentioned we do have a native app. So for those companies that want the smartphone, now you can use this out of the box on a browser, a smartphone browser, Safari and that with iPhone. But you know, if you in fact want, and hopefully everybody understands when I say native app, it's something you download from like iTunes or Android, Google Store, or for Windows, I'm not sure where you download it there. But apps have what's called notification. So apps also have memory, and it's just a superior way from the mobility angle. And so the native app aspect for a lot of companies is real important.
Doug, you know, after we went live with Fox, we were taking a look at some of the approving that was being done, and we discovered that all the approvals, VP and higher, were done on a mobile device. So they were one of the earliest customers really using mobile designed portal. And wouldn't you know it, it was all the VPs out golfing in California that were doing approvals from their phones.
Good point.
So my emails have come through. So this is the email I got as the AP manager. It gives me the brief information about what has been added to the request. We can give the full request here. We can give less information depending on what your security needs are. And then we also have the ability to approve by email. This again is very much a security decision. And what the approve deny does is it brings me up a new email and will let me send back to my system that parses the email saying, all right, this person has approved it or denied it. We also have the ability to give you an auto login link that'll terminate after X or so hours. So 3 hours, the person hasn't used it, it won't work. And then we have a link that'll literally just take them to the portal where they can log in and find their approval. So there's a lot of different ways to handle the approval notification. The other nice thing we can do, instead of each notification coming at the time of submission, we can do a daily note. So let's say the user gets 5 or 6 a day, and they want to just handle it when they get in the next day. That next morning, they can just get an email, here's the 6 that have been submitted to you, just letting you know these are ready for your approval.
And this is huge because this directly ties to ease of use.
Exactly.
And being intuitive and not having to learn it, being able to look at the portal and being able to figure it out.
Exactly. So here we have all of our information. It's a read-only field. The AP manager does not have that ability to change any of the information here. But they can add comments which will be reflected inside of the history of the workflow, and they also can approve and deny. So let's go ahead and make this approval, and we'll log in as our last approver, who is our accounting user. So as I talked earlier, I talked about roles and specific users. So accounting we see as a specific role of users. So we can add as many people to this accounting role as you'd like, and we can have them any one of them log in and make that approval. So we saw that tick down from 19 back to 18. Log in as accounting. I see I have my one approval. Dem 106. And we will see something a little bit different here. We gave accounting the ability to make changes. So if during that submission that the vendor or that the buyer did, accounting doesn't see something they like about it, we give accounting that ability to change that. And if that's not something you want, or you want to give that to a different role, or you want to give that to everybody, we can make this editable for whoever you need it to be editable for. Let's go ahead, but we're just going to go ahead and make it approval. Everything looks good, and we'll approve as accounting. And from here, this will go into JD Edwards. And as I said earlier, we have that ability to update JDE, how your JDE works. So we can either run business functions, which is what we're doing here to create this number, this 5567, I'm going to copy that, 556762. And this allows us to go look at it in JD Edwards, but we can update through business functions, we can do the Z files, and we can also do direct update. So there are some oddball functions that JDE doesn't use a business function for. They just literally write to the table, and we can do that. Or we can work with your JD Edwards team, write a custom business function that'll update that table. So if you feel more comfortable running it through a business function created, we can do that as well. It is completely dependent on how you would want to implement your tool. So now that this this vendor's created, let's go take a look at it in JDE. Approval is ticked down to 0. I'm going to log out. I'm going to come over to our JDE environment. Probably going to kick me.
And by the way, when we talk about Z file within our workflow, we can do it in real time, even though it's batch. We can immediately, as soon as the table's populated, do an update. So even with Z file, it's essentially real time.
Right. Or it doesn't have to be. So one of the things I've had customers ask for is business functions, not to run when the person approves, but to run in a batch process every 5 minutes or so. So that way, when the VP is making an approval, it doesn't have to wait for JDE because JDE is typically our bottleneck. So we can only run as fast as JDE can. So if we don't want that VP to wait for the JDE business function, we just do the approval, put it in a batch job, it'll run in 5 or so minutes, and send out the corresponding information as needed. Oops. 5, 6, 7, 6, 2. So here's our new demo vendor 106 with our attachments. So we'll see the iterations, issue, text came up, the history. So we put the history in a CSV file, and then any comments. Our JDE looks to be acting up, but we can pull basically anything. We can also put these into a document management center. So if you have any document repositories that you want to put your items into, we can put it there rather than directly in the JDE. And then we can select this, and we can see the information that's gone through. We selected here's the address that we selected when we created the user.
So this is great, and we're on track. But like I said, we wanted to show a case study review of one address book, a record, the customer. We wanted to show the portal, a live portal, and once again, every portal is personalized to your exact specifications. We've never run into an issue. As long as together we can whiteboard your processes, we can create both the business logic and obviously the user interface. We also have employee create, by the way. That's part of our HR. Once again, creation of an employee master. And so, from that perspective, we'll switch over, and we purposely made it the last part because it's a little bit more involved, and that's the new item master approval and create portal.
Right, and it looks like we only got about 20 minutes left, so I'm going to quickly show the edit. I'm not going to go through the approval flow. It's very similar to what we just saw, but so I'm going to go into one I created earlier, take a look at that information, and just show how our edit works. It's very similar to what we were doing in Wilbur Ellis. We need to make a selection and make a change. So we can make that change there, make a change there, and then submit this. And then the one thing I wanted to show is the approval screen that the user gets. So you can see that we do handle auditing as well as, or making sure we audit all the fields that are being changed, so we have that history. Let me log in as the AP manager. And then back up to 19 for our approval. And remember, we are getting emails through each step that we go through. letting the people know what changes need to be made. And here we can see the vendor phone and the tax ID. Those both were changed. And then here's our changes down here with the old value and the new value, letting the manager know what is being changed before approval is made. Okay.